What's going on, everybody? It's Travis here with the NPCs, and welcome to another weekly news roundup. It is November 19th, 2022, and in tonight's live stream, we will be talking about Bethesda replies directly to Mick Gordon, or to Mick Gordon's blog post that we talked about in the last news live stream, and we've got some details there about what exactly they said. Of course, we've also got Xbox Project Keystone to talk about again, and Phil Spencer saying that it looks like it's not going to be coming to market anytime soon, mostly due to price. And of course, we'll also be talking about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet becoming the lowest rated Pokemon games on Metacritic. Why exactly is that? Well, we're going to run our intro and then we'll jump right into it. And of course, that was the intro, but we're here now. We're live. We're happy. We're healthy. We're excited to bring you the news. Of course, you know me. I'm Travis. That guy over there is Kyle, I guess. I think that's Kyle. Yeah, it looks like him. He's not. He's not completely decimated by the news that Pokemon got rated so low, on everything. But that's
Pokemon.
That's towards the end of the news here. We'll get around to it though. But Kyle, we've got some big stuff to talk about here, especially the reply from Bethesda regarding Mick Gordon's blog post and exactly what they went and said. Did you get a chance to read what they said, or basically what they didn't say?
I mean, it's incredibly short in comparison to the material that Mick Gordon presented. So I definitely had an opportunity to read this one in full.
Yeah, it's crazy. So here's what they go on to say. And so this was posted on their Twitter. It says, the recent post by Mick Gordon both mischaracterized and misrepresented the team at id Software, the development of Doom Eternal, Marty Stratton, and Chad Mossholder with a one-sided and unjust account of an irreparable professional relationship. I said id, not ID. We are aware of all the details and history in the matter and unequivocally support Marty, Chad, and the team at id Software. We reject the distortion of the truth and selective presentation of incomplete, quote-unquote, facts. We stand ready with full and complete documented evidence to disclose in an appropriate venue as needed. The statements posted online have incited harassment and threats of violence against Marty, Chad, and the id Software team. Any threats or harassment directed towards members of our teams will be met with swift and appropriate action to protect their health and safety. We remain incredibly proud of ID's previous collaborations with Mick Gordon and ask that fans refrain from reaching conclusions based on his account and, more importantly, from attacking any of the individuals mentioned on either side, including Marty, Chad, or Mick. And it's really a non-answer because Mick in his blog post basically came out with receipts showing details of it. I mean, I could rehash everything we discussed last time, but
well, first of all, it has to be said, it's not cool to go and harass these guys whatsoever. So don't ever do that. But I mean, the same thing was actually happening to Mick Gordon. And that's one of the reasons he came forward with this information is, Marty Stratton had come up and said that he was, hard to work with, that, he presented all these claims on his Twitter and, in blog posts that he was difficult and so on and so forth. And that's what caused Mick Gordon to actually present all this material in the first place. Is accusations were starting to get thrown at him, and he had to, come up and say, hey, hold on. This is, my proof that's not the full story either. So, I mean, this is almost like them getting overly defensive real quick. I don't know that, Marty, Chad, are getting as much flack as, potentially they're saying, but maybe they are. I don't know. But, I mean, I'm sure Mick doesn't condone any of that behavior either. But, I mean, he also was trying to protect himself by presenting all that material.
Yeah, and even Mick had replied directly after his stuff went up that said, to those taking action against the game, please spare a thought for all the talented people who worked incredibly hard to make the game you enjoyed. The team's work, which drew critical acclaim, deserves celebration, and their efforts should not be the target of a protest. Yeah, so Mick even basically stood up and said it's like, this is directed at id Software management, at Marty, And not necessarily even at Chad per se. It's more like he was calling out the fact that it's like Chad was basically having to deliver on this with rather uh, how do I want to put this word here? With a lack of quality in the actual audio that was being put together, but it could have also been something forced down the chain that we haven't seen any other news on yet. But
Mhm.
even so, yeah, it's like it's a pretty big non-answer. And the idea, though, of course, that they say that we stand ready with full and complete documented evidence to disclose in an appropriate venue as needed. It's like, what is that appropriate venue going to be? It's like the dirty laundry
Well,
got aired back in 2020 when Marty had put that post up on Reddit, and Mick decided to go ahead and throw up his 2 cents on it years later, like 2 years, over 2 years after the fact. And
right.
it's like Bethesda probably is. It's like time to start showing some receipts on their side too. It's like if you really want to, it's like you need to like step up and do this here. It's like I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt, but I gotta say the stuff that Mick had put out there is pretty damning. So
Yeah, and I mean, maybe this is something that needs to be looked at on both sides and something that could be settled outside of the appropriate venue, which I'm sure will probably eventually happen. That's usually what happens with cases like this is they just get settled outside of court. But um to the same effect, I see where Mick is trying to is coming from. He's trying to not necessarily cause cause a stir in everything. He's not trying to get people to go after, to go after the creators or any of the higher ups at ID. He's trying to get change in the industry. He wants recognition. He not only that he wants you know to be given a little bit more time than just, oh, this guy's working on it. Oh, I am. Okay, cool. I just barely got an invitation. I mean, there was a lot of things that were misrepresented on both sides, and it's sad and it sucks. And I hope something positive can come out of it personally.
dude, I really hope so too. Like that's the big part of it is that this just needs to be like this needs to be addressed in full from Bethesda side instead of this just we're protecting our team here, but we've got our own receipts and we'll just disclose them at the time that we feel comfortable with. It's like you guys have kind of already hit that point here now that maybe it's time to finally just either get this out there or resolve this in a professional way that's behind the scenes with Bethesda and ID and Mick that isn't hush money or anything. Like, let's just get that done and over with so we can move on.
Or, at what point does Microsoft need to step in and say, hey, we need to BD8 this out and
Yeah.
you you know.
That's the big part of it is that, yeah, it's Microsoft's show now more than anything else. And it's like, if this is
Mhm.
one of their brands that's causing problems, it's like, it's going to be time for them to step in and start, knocking some heads to say, okay, what is going on? Show us
Right.
all the details here. And I mean, Microsoft's not one to be able to actually like steer clear of any BS or anything like that either. They'll go deep into it and they'll be able to know for sure
Mhm.
who's lying and where. I mean, you don't mess with one of the bigger one of the biggest tech companies in the world. So
Right.
it's going to be one of those interesting ones to see. But in the meantime, Mick has not provided any other reply out other than what's already been said so far about, is like this is directed at ID management, at Bethesda management, at Marty. It's like everybody else that's on the team does not deserve any of the flack or disrespect. So as it stands right now, come on, as a gaming community, we need to do better. We need to be able to stand up like for what we believe in, but at the same time, we've got to make sure that we're not crossing that line when it comes to things like hateful comments or threats or anything of that sort. It's like you want to make change in the world, you can't be doing any of that. So us as a gaming community need to be able to step up and do better. So that's what we just have to ask of all of us, do better. In the meantime, we're going to be waiting, of course, to see if there's any other additional replies to see, I guess, what could potentially come up here. Um, but I guess we're going to carry on to our next story in the list. And this is going to be a very, very interesting one, especially on the heels of the potential acquisition by Microsoft of Activision Blizzard. Blizzard is going to be pulling their games from China coming up here in January due to a license dispute. It looks like the deal is going to end on January 23rd, and all of the Blizzard games that we have come to know and love are going to be disappearing from the China market, which includes World of Warcraft, Hearthstone, Warcraft 3 Reforged, the Overwatch series, StarCraft series, Diablo 3, and Heroes of the Storm. And of course, we're on the heels of Diablo 4 potentially being released sometime soon, too. So that's a pretty big thing for it coming up. And they go on even to say, so looking at this article from Video Games Chronicle, I guess Blizzard's statement had said that they didn't reach a deal to renew the agreements that is consistent with Blizzard's operating principles and commitments to players and employees, and the agreements are set to expire in January 2023. Let's see here if I can find the actual statement. Let's see. It looks like NetEase came back instead. Material differences on key terms and references protecting the data and assets of Chinese players. We have put in a great deal of effort and tried with our utmost sincerity to negotiate with Activision Blizzard so that we can continue our collaboration and serve the many dedicated players in China. And that was per William Ding, CEO of NetEase. However, there are material differences on key terms that we could not reach an agreement. We hold high regard in our product and operational standards and abide by our commitments to Chinese players. So basically, NetEase has been the license holder for 14 years to be able to distribute Activision Blizzard titles in China. That now officially comes to an end, though. So that's a pretty big hit for a market. I mean, I don't know how big it is in the scene, especially when it comes to things like Overwatch and I guess at least maybe Overwatch, but I'd figured that in the Chinese market, Heroes of the Storm, World of Warcraft, and any of the other RTS games that are, the tried and true, bread and butter for like even Activision Blizzard, that, there would be quite a few players, but it's like, what do you think the impact's going to be here? I mean, like, how many people do you think this is really going to hit?
I think it'll affect a lot of players personally, especially when you look at like the Hearthstone front. One of China's biggest markets for gaming is the mobile market, and Hearthstone is one of the biggest markets over there. In all honesty, as far as like mobile gaming and competitive mobile gaming. Um, that being said, you look back at what was it, 2 years ago during the uh, Hearthstone World Tournament, we had the issue with them doing the free China, and they tried to use May as a mascot for it.
Oh
And
my God, I forgot all about that part.
yeah, and I think that might actually have something to do with NetEase not actually renewing the deal with Blizzard, Activision, potentially. Is that big blow up a few years back, because it was highly publicized, and it
Yeah, I remember that now.
with something like that, China really, really takes it to a public standpoint, and I mean, they feel it affects their people so deeply, that I could see
Yeah.
them wanting to terminate as soon as possible. And this being an easy out, it's potentially there. I mean, regardless of how many players actually play Blizzard games, there's thousands of other mobile games that players are active on, especially in China. They have, I mean, a third of the world's population. So
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right in that part. And I think you do make a very excellent point, especially with the crackdown back in, what was that, 2019, 2020, with or even maybe even back to 2018, with all of the, I think it was 2019, yeah, with the Free Hong Kong speech and all the other statements that did come out. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if some of that does play into it. I think one of the other things though too is that there has been a large push for Activision Blizzard to make more mobile titles, and that, of course, is going to be one of the key things that is going to thrive in China. But it feels like part of it might still even be with those mobile games, the level of control that's required to meet Chinese regulator requirements, or even
yeah.
maybe the over pervasiveness of how like the Chinese internet actually functions even in the first place, because they lock so much stuff down. I mean, there's the comment, the Great Firewall of China, which is truly the
Hmm.
case. So maybe there was just something in there that they saw in the legalese that Activision Blizzard saw that was just like, there's no way we can support this. There's no way we can just make this happen. And well, what's funny here is that
Yeah.
it's like farther along, I guess, in the Video Games Chronicle article here. Here's one of the notes they made here at the end. It says the company's head of partnership, Simon Zhu, excuse me, offered a more blunt appraisal on social media, claiming that, quote, one day when what has happened behind the scenes could be told, developers and gamers will have a whole new level of understanding of how much damage a jerk can make. Now, doesn't say who the jerk is. It doesn't say if the jerk is Activision Blizzard. It doesn't say if the jerk is maybe the is someone in the NetEase organization that may have caused the problem. It doesn't really um, point out exactly where the hit is. But needless to say, I mean that's kind of making it seem like there was more than just disagreements. It sounds like maybe there's a full blown argument behind the scenes that we just haven't heard about
Well,
yet.
and of course, earlier this year, NetEase did have World of Warcraft mobile that was planned to launch, and there was a disagreement between Blizzard and NetEase that totally canned the whole project. So, I mean that there's a whole lot of things that are stacking up against the project, and saying that, yeah, maybe there's possibly something else or multiple something else's going on in the background that are preventing this partnership from continuing on.
Yeah, I would believe that, especially because because Activision Blizzard being the larger org, I wonder if that might also include the upcoming Call of Duty Warzone mobile that's also in the works too. That
Hmm.
maybe there was also something there that could kind of tie in, but we don't see anything about Activision titles being affected by this. It's specifically Blizzard, but we have to make mention of Activision Blizzard because that is the company. So if they have different licensing agreements in China, that's one thing, which that probably looks like that's what the case is here. But it seems like even with those separate ones, that could be tantamount to the potential for these other mobile games to not become available, or other Activision titles to not become available in China, potentially after that January 2023 timeline hits for Blizzard titles. So
Yeah,
another
but
wait and
I
see.
mean, who's to say that once if and when Microsoft does actually get to sign the ink on that contract, that there is the potential for NetEase to sign a whole new contract with uh, Blizzard, Activision, Microsoft. So
Oh,
it
that
it
could be
could
it too. That very well
yeah,
could be part of it.
the changing of the guard could be a whole different story. So
Oh
that
yeah.
it really is a whole wait and see. There's too many factors I think that are going to play into this one to make a short term uh, prediction anyway.
Right. I get that. Um, that does actually make quite a bit of sense that that could be part of it too. That maybe there's a little bit more that they'll have to like work towards or something just because of it. Like maybe it'll make things worse. That it's like we're getting into that weird time period now where we could end up actually being acquired by Microsoft. So it's like licensing might be even a little more bizarre. So that could be it. It could be some other dispute stuff. Guess what? We don't know. We're just here to speculate, at least for right now. We're just delivering what we know. And what we
Yep,
don't
yep,
know
yep.
is how bad it's going to be for players over there in China once this happens, like whether their accounts all go up in flames or anything else. So, in the meantime, as
Now they
always,
can all switch to Raid Shadow Legends.
Raid Shadow Legends. Speaking of sponsorships, no, we're not sponsored by anybody. We sponsor
Nope.
ourselves. Yeah, let me just pull out my wallet and dump out all the cash here.
Right.
Anyway, so we move on actually to our next story here. Oh, excuse me. And this was kind of going to be seen as happening at some point in time anyway, too. Um, we were hoping to see Project Keystone actually make its way out and be potentially available as soon as this holiday season. However, it looks like what's been codenamed as Project Keystone, that is Microsoft's Xbox streaming only device, it's been put on hold, according to Phil Spencer, because it's too expensive to make. So Phil Spencer had an interview with The Verge earlier this week, and talked with them, saying that Microsoft couldn't create a streaming only console it could sell for a cheap enough price. They were aiming for a price range of somewhere between $99 and $129. Uh, and that's, of course, with the assumption that Microsoft is going to take a hit on every console that they sell. But they could not even still get to that point. They could not shave enough down to actually even get there. So what Phil goes on to say, he says, the console that we built that people have seen, Keystone, was more expensive than we wanted it to be when we actually built it out with the hardware that we had inside. We decided to focus the team's efforts on delivering the smart TV streaming app, which we've seen the partnerships between Samsung and Microsoft to deliver the Xbox game streaming app onto TVs. I believe there's some work for LG coming down the line too that I believe we've seen. I don't know about anybody else, but the fact that they couldn't get the price down, I guess, is alarming for the level of quality that they were trying to put into it. And I guess they actually had builds of these boxes that were actually enough that developers could take home, developers being the internal to Microsoft, could take home and actually use, and worked just fine. I mean, Kyle, like, do you see this as a big blow, or do you see like the TV app really being the new go-to instead? What's your thoughts on this?
So the TV app's so difficult. I mean, that just means that people are gonna have to go out and buy new TVs because really, when you think about it, I have a Samsung TV that I only got like I think maybe 5 years ago. It's a 32 inch. It's pretty nice, you know. It was new when I got it. It was, I believe, new out that year, and they stopped updating. I think two of the premium video service apps on it already. I don't believe I can access. I believe it's Netflix and Hulu that are no longer available. I have to use a streaming stick for it. So smart TVs, it's too that's too rough. They're too much of a gamble. Um, Honestly, I think focus should personally be on making the Series the Series S at this point a little bit more powerful and pushing out something that's a little bit more costly on the streaming stick side.
Yeah, and like there was even further talk. Like the article we're referencing here with this information is from IGN, but I read and listened to a bit of the discussion on The Verge as well. Uh,
Hmm.
Part of it that Phil had even talked about too is the upcoming holiday pricing for like the Xbox Series S, for example, which what we're already seeing come out for Black Friday deals, given that Black Friday is less than a week away now, and I gotta say that kind of hurts my head a little bit. But that console, especially like at Target, is going to be releasing in a holiday bundle form that's going to be selling for $250, so $50 less than what it normally sells for. And we even see bundle deals still, like some that include, like, I think Target at one point had a gift card bundled in, an extra controller bundled in, which, you know, you're talking $50, $60 right there itself.
Right now,
It's
Amazon's doing them for
Yeah,
$229, same
there you
bundle.
go.
I think Target this week is doing or this coming week is doing it the 249 with the $50 gift card for Black Friday. So I yeah, I think we should just get rid of them. Like, move along. Developers
Oh.
don't like them. They're holding back the whole development cycle of this gaming line, honestly, because Microsoft has such a stranglehold on the market, really and truly. They well, number one, they have a lot of publishers in their back pocket. But beyond that, they have, so many publishers that they want to produce the games for Microsoft too, because then they lose out on half the money, you know?
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
eh, but then they have to do it for a restrictive console all of a sudden because it runs off way lower RAM.
It does. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So,
So maybe this is what, like, let me look at the ulterior motive here on this, Kyle. They're pushing out the Xbox Series S at these discounted deals. We haven't seen any
mhm,
sales on the Xbox Series X because those are still harder to get a hold of. They're not as hard as like a PlayStation 5, but they're still
right.
hard enough to get a hold of. what's the possibility that these sales, and again, ulterior motives here, are to get all of those pushed out and then for a hardware refresh to come down the line for the Series S sometime here in 2023? Let the rumor wheels begin spinning.
Oh, I think that's totally possible. That would make
Yeah.
it way easier for them to launch Keystone, because I think over the next year they're gonna find that there aren't as many people accessing the smart app on TVs. If anything, they're accessing it from their cell phone, their tablet.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be from their TV,
Right.
because TVs, the even the smart TVs, let's face it, the hardware that's in them that makes them smart is actually pretty stupid in comparison to the hardware that's in the stick, because the TV has to do
Oh,
everything the
no kidding.
TV has to do, plus the smart aspect. Yeah, the smart aspect, they're gonna put the lowest quality parts in it, for those processes. Whereas if you get a streaming stick, it's gonna be proprietary for that thing, so you're
Well,
gonna get the best of the hardware that they have available for it.
oh, I agree. And that's where I find it funny because what I'm holding in my hand right now, it needs like one more thing on it necessarily, but it's my iPad mini USB Type C adapter that lets me
Hmm.
do HDMI, USB 3.0, and USB Type C on it so I can charge it. I can output to a monitor. And if I wanted to, with that USB, I could, hook in anything else. With something like this and my iPad mini, which, is already a portable device, or like even for any other USB Type C device I could potentially have, like, say, I don't know, maybe a phone that has USB Type C because my iPhone doesn't have it. And we probably won't see Type C on an iPhone in some time or for some time. But now I have this multi-use device that I can slap up onto a TV and actually output. And I've tried it. It works. It's not 100% the best, and I think that's probably just more Wi-Fi than anything. But I can stream my games up to a TV through my iPad and play no problem. It's like
Right.
that is a function that I can have there. And it is just another thing that allows me to do stuff like that. And that's where I agree with you, is that not everybody's going to run out to buy an iPad to do stuff like this, but you are right, is that there are other ways to consume this content. And by having it specifically locked into the TV market space, by having it as an app, that's going to get deprecated so fast, especially as newer TVs come out, that you're just not going to have the hardware to really support something like that, especially if they offer at some point in time 2K streaming, through their 2K at 60 frames per second instead of just the 1080p. And one other
Yeah.
thing I want to add, and this is why I find it more of an interesting thing that maybe Microsoft could do potentially, because we're used to this in the PC space. It's
Hmm.
like if a brand new processor comes out, Kyle, like I know like you're like on the highest tier of the AMD Ryzen 5000 series processors, but let's say like with me, like a new processor comes out and I want to go and upgrade to it. All I need to do is make sure that my BIOS is up to date, and then I can slap that processor in and I'm good to go, right? Is that about what I can do?
Yeah.
Yeah. What if Microsoft maybe instead goes back to the engineering board and decides to, oh, I don't know, come up with a module that slaps into the expansion card slot and takes advantage of those PCI Gen 4 lanes with some sort of like expansion module that gives that added bump. So that way the Series S could potentially
Oh
become more
man.
powerful with something external.
Turn it into a modular system.
Why not?
um,
These things are close enough to being PCs
I
as
mean,
is. Why not take it up to that next level?
really and truly, you think about it, it's not entirely not possible. There are enough lanes there. There's enough space, or bandwidth through those lanes. I'm fairly certain that even pushing it full potential of the drive, you should be able to use some of it for RAM. So I don't see why that wouldn't be effective.
Right. I'm just thinking
But I
out
mean,
there, that it's like they could sell the Series S for this cheap cost, especially through the holidays, and get more out there. And then it's like, hey, you want to give your Series S that extra bump And of course, it's like we want to make our developers happy too. Here's a module you can go buy for $150, so you don't have to go buy a Series X. Slap that in, and you're off to the races with not as much RAM as the Series X, but it gets you maybe another 4 gigs, maybe another 6, and maybe just a little bit of extra oomph there to get you to the races. I don't know. I'm just thinking of the possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I just think about the engineering costs and stuff into that.
Nah. If Nintendo could do it with the expansion card, like, if they could do that, then why can't we get it here with the expansion pack? Excuse me.
This is true.
It was done then. It can be done now. Come on, Kyle.
Right?
PCI Gen 4. I know Gen 5 is out right now. Sue me. But
Yeah.
needless to say, it's like it's an idea, though, because I know the story is focusing on the streaming device, but if that's going away, it's looking at least at alternatives. The Series S is going to do well for a short period of time, but it's going to need that added bump. And instead of getting people to go out and buy a new Series S when they do a hardware refresh, offer this up as an option.
I honestly see, I don't see any refreshes coming for the Series X anytime soon.
Nope.
The Series S, though, I see a refresh for the RAM and maybe some of the other things in it. I don't know other than RAM, because I personally don't have one. After the computer, I haven't really felt the need, but for a streaming stick, I feel like that price point is going to be low.
Yeah.
I think you're looking at the little brother of an Nvidia Shield, and it's probably going to be like $150.
But I don't think they're going to be able to do anything like that anytime soon. There's got to be other hardware costs that have to come down before they do it.
Yeah, I think we're looking maybe late next year for an announcement, and for maybe a probably mid 2024 launch.
Then that's why I'm thinking that Microsoft needs to start jumping on it and come up with an expansion module that adds more power and makes it more worthwhile to actually go and get.
Yeah.
More power.
More power.
Well, how about instead of more power than to the console, how about more power to the people? How about that instead, Kyle?
Ah, that works too.
I'm making a really crappy segue here because we got another story to talk about here that deals with Microsoft. And that is their transparency report. So I had to move on because I swear to God, I can go into engineering talk for days, like about ideas to be able to make the Series S, with some more oomph. But let's get past that. I don't need that right now in my life. Microsoft has gone ahead and dropped on the 14th its very first transparency report. So here on their blog, they go off to state, at Xbox, we put the player at the center of everything we do, and this includes our practices around trust and safety. With more than 3 billion players around the world, vibrant online communities are growing and evolving every day, and it is our role to foster spaces that are safe, positive, inclusive, and inviting for all players, from the first-time gamer to the seasoned competitor. Hello. So they dropped their first ever transparency report for Xbox on the 14th, talking about exactly the numbers and details that went into the different things they had to do for the community itself. And that even includes one of the first things here is a handy dandy little chart that explains the process that, at least at a 1,000-foot level, of what exactly happens, with the process. And it's a good, just kind of quick infographic read here. But what I know you guys care about is you care more about the statistics. So let's talk about that here in the blog, what they say here. The Xbox team issued more than 4.33 million proactive enforcements against inauthentic accounts, representing 57% of the total enforcements in the reporting period. Inauthentic accounts are typically automated or bot-created accounts that create an unlevel playing field and can detract from positive player experience. Players are stewards of the community. Player reporting is a critical component in our safety approach. Alongside our increased proactive safety measures, investments in scanning and filtering technologies, and education of the Xbox ambassador community, reporting helps us improve the work that we do to better protect our players. Our players provided over 33 million reports this period, with communications at 46% and conduct at 43%, accounting for the majority of player concerns. And then, of course, it makes comments about players are in control, and goes on to talk about how how there's all those different tweaks and adjustments we can make in the Xbox UI to make things safer, at least or more enjoyable for our experience. Let me try to find here. There's a pretty good article that actually gave some of those numbers on what they actually had done. So that way we're not opening up the report all the way. Give me a second to find that. Let's see, Xbox transparency report, and where was this? Let's see. Okay, here we go. Yeah, this was what I was looking at. So from The Verge. So they, let's see, in their total enforcements, according to The Verge, it says the data reveals that proactive enforcements by Microsoft increased almost tenfold since the last reporting period, and that 4.33 million of the 4.78 million total enforcements concerned accounts that had been tampered with or used suspiciously outside of the Xbox platform guidelines. These unauthorized accounts can impact players in a variety of ways, from enabling cheating to spreading spam and artificially inflating friend and follower numbers. Further breakdown of the data reveals 199,000 proactive enforcements involving adult sexual content, 87,000 for fraud, 54,000 for harassment or bullying, and also claims that 100% of the actions in the last 6-month period relating to account tampering, piracy, and phishing were taken proactively by Xbox rather than via reports. So that means that they have a pretty robust scanning environment in place to be able to detect when these things are happening. So, those are some good numbers, at least, to think about right now, is that, that there are actually some pretty big efforts being made by Microsoft to address a lot of the issues in the community when it comes to those accounts. And of course, the majority of problems they dealt with were bots. That's a pretty good thing for us, right, Kyle? Or are you a fan of the bots, because they make you look better in games like they do for me?
Yeah, it depends on the bots. But no, I really am not a fan of the bots. No, I'm surprised that, to hear that those numbers actually, I didn't know that they had personally, gone out and stopped that much in comparison to just, player reported phishing or scams or cheating and harassment, so on and so forth. So it's really awesome. I think that, they're making the effort. But of course, they still call for community help, as always, and they do call shout out in the transparency report to their ambassadors program, that they've had ongoing for quite a few years now. But I don't know. I think it's really really cool that, to actually get this information, and for them to share the information, to see that the progress that, or the attempt at progress that's being made out there.
Yeah. I appreciate at least seeing some of these numbers and efforts, because I think in the grand scheme of it all, being transparent about what you're actually doing behind the scenes helps to prove that it's like you are actually doing these things. You are taking
You're
care of
being
your players.
proactive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By sharing this information out, it helps. And one big stat here that I found, actually courtesy of Engadget, says, don't count on winning an appeal if you think Microsoft made a mistake. Out of more than 151,000 case appeals during the period, just 6%, about 9,250, led to reinstatements, which means that Microsoft is not just willy-nilly banning people, and that their systems are pretty well set to validate the concerns, to go through the process to actually confirm everything that did at least occur according to the reports or whatever their proactive tools have found, and that they are at least showing here that their system maybe made mistakes or what have you, but that it's not a big number. 6%, 9,250 accounts out of 151,000. That's
But it
not
also
too
does
bad.
show that they're doing the research, and if they were wrong, they are assisting players in getting their accounts back as well.
Yeah, exactly. But at least it shows that there is some type of margin of error here, though. That
Hmm.
there's a 6% margin of error, at least when it comes to those who do appeal their cases. Because you think about those numbers from earlier, though, like the 33, 40 million accounts being banned because a lot of it is just bots and whatnot. But
Mm-hmm.
that, it's like you take that into account, you get down to that 151,000. That's definitely a smaller number, though, of what's actually being appealed. That means
Right.
in my mind, the system is working. And by having these
Mm-hmm.
details and numbers in front of all of us, that makes us, the player, that much more trusting, at least, of what's happening. And I don't know, like, does Nintendo put anything out like this? Does Sony put out anything like this? Like, I think I've seen transparency report like, for other companies, but I don't know about, like, the other gaming
Yeah,
companies.
not to my knowledge, especially not Nintendo. I mean, Sony may have once upon a time, but I not that I can remember. But yeah, Sony or not Sony, Nintendo, I don't think would ever necessarily actually do this unless they had something just crazy to show off. With Nintendo, you just kind of know that it is working, and it's there because I mean they have ninjas.
Oh, they absolutely do. Like their ninja lawyers will go and tear you a new one as soon as they can. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you guys want to go and see the report there, go check out news.xbox.com and look for that transparency report blog post, and they've got the link there to their transparency report, and you can go and figure out for yourself exactly, maybe you think that they're doing the right thing, maybe you think that they're not doing it right. I mean, it looks like some things are going right in our opinion, but you know, opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one, and they all stink. So take it as you will.
Mm-hmm.
But let's move on here to our last main story in the news for this week, and that is about, shockingly, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and that it is now officially the lowest rated Pokemon game, or Pokemon games, excuse me, on Metacritic. So the game officially released this week, but all of the reviews that were coming out prior to the release were talking about performance hiccups and problems in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. More specifically, that it looks like the biggest complaint is that the Nintendo Switch may actually be showing its age, and that we may be running into a problem where attempts like this to make these awesome open world games on the Switch is just not as feasible as some people believe it to be. And so this article here from GameSpot talks about it a little bit. Multiple reviews, including our own at GameSpot, mention that while the open world is an excellent step forward for the franchise, the games are held back by technical issues, such as pop-in, frame rate drops, and muddy textures. Um, it doesn't seem like it's had any effect on sales, though, as Scarlet and Violet are the most pre-ordered Pokemon games in the series' history. Let's see. I'm gonna try to find a video here of some of these different like things actually happening, because I've seen some like TikToks and that of it. I know you've seen some stuff too, but I mean, like what are your thoughts on it though, Kyle? Like with what's going on with Pokemon though?
Well, I kind of watched an overview of the opening of the game, and I don't want to ruin anything, but it does seem very rushed, and even just getting the first legendary. I mean, they make it make sense about how it can't really necessarily fight for you or do anything right when you first get him, but to the same effect, I don't know. The story feels rushed. The videos, especially the pre-rendered videos, are just god awful. Some of them, to be frank. I mean, there's one right at the beginning where you're sitting in class and it's just scanning the classroom, and you think you're looking at like old Super NES graphics, the way the characters are moving around, just the way their legs are like kicking back and forth in the chair and stuff, and their heads are doing this like weird jerky motion, and almost like they're robots, and just some of the camera aspects are not smooth, and I don't know. There's been some major issues as far as that goes that just don't make sense. It lacked polish as far as a Pokemon game goes.
Yeah, and so I've got a video playing behind us here from a YouTuber, C Willie HD, who actually shows some of these little technical hiccups that are happening. And according to his video here from actually yesterday, this is like he's captured these about 6 hours into the game. So I'm not trying to spoil anything or what have you here for any of our viewers, but I just want to at least kind of bring some of this stuff up here to kind of show at least what's been reported out there. And it's kind of crazy to actually think about what we what we're actually kind of being made aware of out here and what's going on in the game. And like one of the key parts here that was actually mentioned in a different article I was reading somewhere, I can't remember exactly, it may have even been a discussion on Twitter, but one of the concerns is it's the amount of content we've actually had out of Game Freak and the Pokemon Company for games in just the last couple of years alone. We had Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, and we had Pokemon Legends Arceus, and then now we have Scarlet and Violet. When normally we usually see mainline Pokemon games come out like once every, I think the time frame was like once every 3 years. Is it
Yeah.
possible that they had so much Pokemon stuff happening that in the world of them trying to develop all these titles that they just did not have enough time for QA or the proper amount of effort put into QA to actually catch all of these issues? Like maybe the Switch can handle all of this stuff, but because of the time frames and such, they couldn't actually deliver as they um, as they would with a quality experience.
Right. So you think it's potentially a rush development cycle that could be the biggest hang up of the whole thing.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like I do believe that the Nintendo Switch has really reached the end of its life cycle when it comes to the actual hardware underneath, because it's still a great machine. It still plays well, but for what some gamers are demanding, especially like what I just make mention of in the article there from GameSpot about this is the highest number of pre-orders made for any Pokemon game. Obviously, expanding out into these new avenues, such as the open world format, and it's been a long time coming for Pokemon anyway. I think you and I can go back to like being kids and just imagining something like this being available as a kid. But
Right.
it's the idea, though, that the hardware they want to release it on is just not as powerful potentially to support it. But at the same time, though, now with all of these talks about development and such anyway, maybe the Switch could handle it, but there has to be some other sacrifices that need to be made to allow for it to function properly. Like I can't imagine a day one patch or so. Actually, this had a day one patch that didn't even address
This is
anything.
after a day one
Yeah,
patch that we're seeing all these technical issues still. I
yeah.
mean, when you were playing the video in the background, there was one issue where he was trying to walk into the grass just off of the path, and he couldn't on one portion, but then he walked down like literally maybe in game 5-10 feet, and then walked off the path, could walk back onto the path in the place that he was trying to walk off the path, but once he got back on the path, could not get back off until he walked down off that ledge. So I mean, there are a lot of small, just annoying technical issues in this one, and maybe it is, partially to blame for the short development cycle of the game. Uh, the Pokemon Company has also had, this is really the first time they've had so many projects in development simultaneously at once. But beyond that, you're right. The Switch is I think kind of close to the end of its life cycle. Traditionally, Nintendo has kind of stuck to the console life cycle of the days of yore, which was about 6 to 8 years, unfortunately. And we're right at that 6 year point. So really, could we be seeing rumors of a new Switch? Of course we're going to. Will we see a new Switch or anything about a new Switch? I think what we'll probably honestly see is some major updates for this game first, but they're gonna be trying to maybe even pull this version from the market, and I could see them, because it's Nintendo, totally pulling it and putting out a new version of the game.
Yeah, like
This
imagine
is a
if this
major
was.
oversight for Nintendo.
Oh, I agree. Like, imagine if this was a Mario or Zelda game. Like, this actually has me a little bit concerned. Like, I know that Breath of the Wild was an open world game that you could go about anywhere on. And the idea
Hmm.
that the upcoming sequel to Breath of the Wild could potentially, fall into this same category, because obviously it's like you've got to take the next games and make them bigger and better. It's like if you want your players to come back, it's like you need to offer new things. Well, how many more new things can you actually add before the system just can't handle it, or you have to start making shortcuts to make that happen? Like, are we going to potentially hear in, like, what is it? I think May of next year is when we're supposed to see the new Legend of Zelda title drop. Are we potentially going to hear a delay because of potential problems with the game itself, just
Is
because of
this going to be
hardware?
another cross-platform Zelda?
It makes me wonder if that's what we're going to see. That, like, for a mainline Nintendo game, whether it is a Pokemon game or a Mario game or a Zelda game, you can't go wrong with it. Like, you have to be
Hmm.
very careful about it, because the expectations have been so high on those titles for so long that any sort of misstep or mistake is going to be noticeable and is going to cause your community to lash out, at least in some capacity, like they have been. It's like, oh, the Pokemon game really takes me out of playing because of all these different graphical issues and that. It's like, imagine if someone said that about a Zelda game. Imagine a Zelda game ranking lower than anything that it's gotten lately. I think every Zelda game,
Yeah.
at least I've seen as of late, has had, like in the 80s to 90s. Imagine a Zelda game getting
Right.
in the 70s,
Ugh.
especially if it's the
Ugh.
sequel to Breath of the Wild too. Imagine something like
But I
that. That
mean,
would hit Nintendo hard.
yeah, I mean, there are instances though where Scarlet and Violet, the frame rate's dropping down to like 15 frames a second, so it's awful. But you go into battle and some of the animations and stuff look fantastic. So I wonder where the ball was dropped. Um, is this something that potentially could get patched? Personally, I doubt it. I think some of the issues are unfortunately hard coded, and for them
Yeah.
to patch it, it would be, like I said, it would be a total rework. They'd be pulling game cartridges and trying to reissue them, or which could unfortunately also make these copies of the game rare. But I don't want to cause any like false panic on that front, because I think in all likelihood this is the Pokemon we're gonna get, and this is how it's gonna be. We might see some minor patches, but unfortunately,
Yeah.
unless they release, and who knows, they could release an Ultra Scarlet and an Ultra Violet like they did. What was it? Sun and Moon.
Yeah, that's about what I'm kind of leaning towards as well too, is that this is probably the version we're going to get. And just like we saw, like with the graphical issues in Cyberpunk 2077, that I wonder if we're going to see similar efforts there, because like it doesn't seem like anybody's hating this game. It seems like that they're able to play it. It's just that these graphical issues and technical issues are just kind of like really pulling players out of the experience of the game itself, though.
Hmm.
I wonder if what we're going to see is more of just the cyberpunk approach, instead of, at least to the point of like the way they deliver on patches, that it's like, okay, our first focus is not on DLC. Our first focus is not on these level of additions, but we're focusing on core technical improvements of the game itself,
Yeah,
and that's
we
where
want the
all of our
game
dev
playable.
focus is. Exactly. So I wonder if they're going to take that same approach. I mean, at least Pokemon is just like a one console thing anyway. But needless to say, something's going to
Is
have
it
to
though?
change. Well, one console, at least in the sense of like, you're not going to play Pokemon Scarlet and Violet on an Xbox or on a PlayStation
Yeah.
or on PC, unless you use an emulator. Which I've actually, to be honest with you, I'm actually very curious to know what the community is seeing in the ROM version of Scarlet and Violet, because it's out there. I'm
Yeah.
genuinely curious to know
And
if anybody's
I'm
running into
wondering if
those
there's
issues.
yeah, and I'm actually curious to
Hmm.
see if anyone's attempted any sort of patching on the frame rate issues specifically, like in the in-game videos or some of the clunkiness. I
Hmm.
noticed at one point when you brought the video back up, they even had the legendary while it was in the riding mode, they horse tilted it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No,
So
exactly. So
yeah, they have to fix these. This
yeah.
is not the Pokemon that we're used to seeing, and I think it could affect how people perceive the Pokemon Company. Unfortunately,
Yeah, especially because and this is where this is like my last thought on it really is it comes to that is because the Pokemon Company has kind of delved into the world of quick actions based on their key property, which is Pokemon. And
hmm
you've got the mobile games, of course, like what is it, Pokemon Unite. You've got Pokemon Go that's still successful alongside Niantic. Um, there's
Pokemon Cafe.
Pokemon Cafe. Not Pokemon. There was another Pokemon game that came out that dealt with like the Elite Four or something like that though too, or like the Elite Four from all the different areas and such. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
That was on mobile.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, there was a mobile version there. It wasn't just Legends; it was something else,
Oh shoot, I think I know what you're talking about. I
or not
don't
Legends,
recall
but
what it
Unite. Yeah,
was.
there was another one because Unite is
Yeah,
like the MOBA. Um,
right.
But no, there was another one that there was there too, and it's like, is it possible that in an effort to try to reach as many people as possible, that they're losing their core focus? And even if they are licensing these out to other orgs, there's still a stringent review process that I got to imagine that these go through because you don't want to tarnish the Pokemon brand in any way, shape, or
Yeah,
form. There's got to be some type of QA process that says if you're going to release a title under our, with our property, it's like it's got to meet these stringent things. It's just like the old school, Nintendo gold seal of approval. It's the same thing. But that's where I want to leave
yeah.
it at is that I think the efforts of the Pokemon Company to expand the Pokemon franchise into things that they hadn't been in before, that they just want to continue to try to make successes off of, might be potentially detracting away from their core experience, which is the handheld titles.
It, I think there is a very strong possibility there.
Well, Kyle, do you want to know what
Yeah.
else is a very strong possibility?
What's that?
Quest markers. That's right. We are done, complete with the main news stories for this week, and it is time to throw the baton of news power to Kyle and to have him go through the rest of the news that we didn't have time for this week's quest markers. So, Kyle, what do we have in the quest markers this week?
So we've got one particularly big one. The Sonic the Hedgehog co-creator Yuji Naka has been arrested amid an insider trading scandal. The co-creator of Sonic the Hedgehog and, of course, the creator of Balan Wonderland has been arrested in Japan after having connections to an insider trading scandal involving Square Enix. Naka, who was working for Square Enix at the time, was implicated with two other employees gaining knowledge of developer aiming, working with Square Enix on the mobile title Dragon Quest Tact. Naka himself purchased 2.8 million yen, or about $20,000 US, in stock in aiming prior to the February 5th deal, with the knowledge while the other two employees implicated purchased 47.2 million yen, or about $336,760 US collectively. Square Enix has said in an official statement that, quote, we have been fully cooperative with requests from the Securities and Exchange Surveillance Commission. We deeply regret the concern this has caused to all concerned. We have dealt with the incident strictly, including internal disciplinary actions taken against the suspected employees. So, unfortunately, one of the big greats has landed himself in jail.
Wah wah.
But moving on to some greater news, we've got Gundam Evolution is going to be released on console December 1st.
Yay!
Of course, finally, it's been out on PC for, what is it, a month now? Or no, it's been 2 months now, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
Yeah. Of course, they announced it in a 12-minute video that included an interview with Kazuya Maruyama, who is one of the producers of the game. During the interview, he actually announced that they will be adding new Gundam from Char's counterattack. So we will actually have the counterpart to the Sosby in the game, finally. We'll have another Finfanel user.
All right.
So, but that'll also probably be another $10 to $15. So open up your wallets.
Woohoo!
But moving on, Crystal Dynamics says it hears fans loud and clear on the Soul Reaver series. Of course, back in October, Crystal Dynamics launched a survey of what former properties, if any, players would like to see make a comeback. Where usually surveys like this only get, a few hundred entries. They announced back on Thursday that this particular survey had over 100,000 entries in response to the Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver series.
Good God.
Yeah, Phil Rogers, CEO of Crystal Dynamics EDOS, said in an earnings call with parent company Embracer Group, we wanted to gain a community perspective on what players are looking for, or should we revisit the land of Nosgoth and our iconic IP Legacy of Kain. So hopefully in a few years coming, we will be able to get to revisit the scorched lands of Nosgoth yet again. We hope, fingers crossed. I love that game series. And, of course, in our last marker of the night, it takes us to a supersized Switch, where, I don't know if you wanted to bring up a video of this one, but where modder Pavlo Mel managed to take a portable LCD screen and 3D print a custom Switch dock to make the system completely portable in a 12.5-inch screen with the comfortable Ori split pad pros as your controllers just above the speakers.
Man, does that thing look gorgeous.
It looks awesome. And so I was reading some of the wiring he actually had to do. Of course, the pass-through for the power and everything. But the fact that he's 3D printed this whole unit that works so well with that split pad pro, which personally I think are a more comfortable controller. I personally don't have any, but I've used them, and yeah, they're so comfortable to use. It's more like using an Xbox controller.
Well, that's awesome. And I gotta say, the thing does actually look pretty slick. So
oh heck yeah.
I need to go look to see if I can actually find his plans there. And I don't know, Kyle, let's add that to the list of projects, just like the Wii GameCube portable that we've been talking about since last week's news.
Right? Heck yeah.
But of course, that is it for quest markers, right, Kyle?
Yes, sir.
And since that is the end of quest markers, that means that is the end of the weekly news roundup for the NPCs here. So thank you so much for tuning in, of course, to the NPCs weekly news roundup for November 19th, 2022. Of course, make sure to follow our podcast over at anchor.fm/the-npcs-podcast. So if you missed anything here, the podcast will be available, and you can go and listen back to the news here for anything you may have missed. Or, of course, if you like our voices enough, you can play us right there in your ears. But besides that, of course, you can also listen to our back catalog of all of our audio that we've come out over with the last 3 years now and over that. So make sure to go subscribe there or on your favorite podcast platform of choice. Just search for the NPCs podcast over on Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and more. Of course, follow us on social media, Twitter and Facebook, and of course, follow us here on YouTube. So when we go live with the news, you'll know when we're up and running. But of course, with that, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. We will catch you all next week.
Bye-bye.